it's amazing, because at the past show that we did a little bit, we were talking a bit about how you read the tissue, of the solar system, and you could look at the Earth and read the tissue of the Earth. And like if you're looking at the tissue of the solar system, I think it'd be good for us to move outside the solar system a bit so somebody could look at this. And of course, we're talking about how Saturn, which in this story a bit is a sun which becomes a water sun and collides with a water body and equal to itself and becomes a water sun and fuses to become a water sun. So there's different sorts of suns and things, but a younger Earth story really is a bit more about, and much younger than most people could think, really. Reading the tissue really tells the past story, of course. If you look outside our solar system, you're seeing a whirlpool, like a tornado having formed, and down at the very base of that whirly, you've got a sun as it's falling through space. If you look outside our solar system instead of from inside it, you'd see a big, huge vortex, like sucking down, falling into the line of Laniakea. So it's falling like the sun, like 42,000 miles an hour, and it's reading the tissue of the past, and you can see inside curlback regions in the vortex places where planets are, and Bode's law sort of is a ratio of where those planets can be, and ordinarily you would find them because you've got these curlback regions where space is sort of rolling back in on itself, sort of thing. So you can see the sun at the very bottom, and it's really magnetic arcs, of course, as space is turning right there in a center point, magnifying, and you can see that it's holding gravitational space around itself, and everything is turning pretty much from west to east, and that's the sun's gravitational equatorial field of itself, and the planets are falling behind the sun. They never get in front of the sun, of course, behind the sun, and spiraling behind, and typically are not necessarily in the same order that you could see them as they are today. And the eye left on Jupiter, for instance, really is where Venus was ejected, as it was an asteroid for some time, and written about such until it becomes a planet not so long ago, really. You've got an eye on Earth where a big, huge asteroid slammed into the Indian Ocean and came out just above Java there, which you've got a huge eye, and then slammed back into the Pacific. You've got lands which used to have hobbits on it in Indonesia and areas like that, where there was little elephants and giant turtles and Florenza's people, and you can go back 17,000 years, and you can see that land was all connected to Australia. Antarctica, of course, really is shown without any ice, and it's a perfect cartography of itself in some of the oldest maps and things. And you look at maps as you go through history, and you can see who was it that put that map together, and this sort of a thing. But planets migrate in and out, of course, where in this story it is, and Cloud story really more about we're living in the fifth sun, which is a sun of earthquakes, and that the first sun is a black sun and called the Sol Niger, and it was an ultraviolet light more, and so the length of the day and the night didn't exist. It was just a soft diffuse light, and that was when we were more connected to Saturn. We get deposited here as Saturn comes in front of Jupiter and deposits the Earth as it pulls back out, and it pulls Jupiter out to 5.3 AUs, astronomical units, where it is today, and leaves the Earth where it is in the equatorial plane that it had when it was with Saturn, and explaining how they got trapped it in space to be, the 24 degrees that it's off the equatorial sun plane, which are where most everything else is, in its equatorial plane, and gets trapped left in space there as Saturn pulls back out. You've got an expanding Earth where continents all grew from each other as the seafloor joints expand, and you've got a 5 mile thick type of magma there, and pushing the continents apart. And water expands, and 1,700% at least can water be expanded as it comes out of its state as a rock. Just 99.1% of all the water that the Earth has is still locked up in the rock. But when asteroids impact, that gets boiled and water comes out, and it expands, and the Earth has grown 12 times larger than it was. And so the fossil age really correlates with a younger Earth, and a journey really from a tree to become a stone, as you could see how quick and fast that could be. But Cole's showing us all around, really maybe only 10,000 years ago or something. And giganticism, of course, you have in huge trees, which is 3-4 miles high. Most people are asking where the forest is today, where it all burned, and there's just evidence of that locked up in the ice caps, of the amount of carbon that was burned, when the younger Dry era all was kicked off with a asteroid that was a atmospherical explosion over the Hudson Bay that pushed the Earth over and caused it to have a new equator than it does today. Back then,
Wow.
and so getting ages to have just falsely agreed, with mechanization and people behind mechanization, and a lot of things have gone on where no truth really has been put proper at all. But soft tissue found in dinosaur T-Rex bones shows you've got a younger Earth, of course. So the scientific methodology of an unproven assumptions, which we'd be looking a little bit here, of course, and the assumptions confounding crucial dating, and looking at the last asteroid impact, which was 2,807 BC, and correlating all of that with Noah's flood, of course. And the conspiracy of silence that's gone on in the dating of the younger Earth is absolute, and the dating of the seafloor expansion, which you can see from the thermal expansion and density, you can see quite factual, a grand unified totality, not a theory. Of how the Earth has grown, where it has, and what different times that the equator has changed. Of course, east-west mountain ranges, which run east-west instead of north-south, did form when they were more north-south. And you can see mountain ranges this way. They're very old ranges. So as you can see, that the Earth has moved over various times, and what causes those things, which is close flyby sorts of conditions where you've got terraformedness of planets coming closer by relative and pushing the Tibetan plateau up, and then also here in Turtle Island in northwestern United States, of where the land is terraformed and pushed also up into the mountains, sort of thing, where a high plateau sort of more or less is formed. And so these terraformedness really is occurred because planets came close in those times, and a big huge fusion occurred, just the same as when Saturn wandered and then left Venus to wander, and then of course Venus gets wandered into Jupiter and gets a plasma discharge, which you can still see the eye on Jupiter today. But you've got mega tsunamis, which
Whoa.
definitely correlate with the Ricard structure in Africa, which is the Eye of Africa, of course, which I've been there many, many times to look to see all of this. And then you've got the Berkel asteroid impact, which correlates with the what's called Noah's flood, which was the asteroid which causes a tsunami to flood over the northern part of Africa and leaves and deposits all the sand that's there today. But maps show that Africa was really two continents at one point. It was cut in half with a big, huge sea originally. Massive increase in rainfall. You've got whales all of a sudden, just in the desert, and fossils of whales seen to come from land animals and things. And you've got asteroid impact and a hydrological balance that occurs. You've got Saturn's rings, which is left as a result of the bodies smashing into each other and leaving all those rings, which are slowly disappearing. But the comet of doom, which really sunk Atlantis, maybe we might talk a little bit about that in 8,498 BC, when an asteroid broke into a couple of pieces and slammed into the Atlantic Ocean and sunk pieces of the escarpment that was close to where the magma was boiling up, where land was, and running our way up to Iceland. But down where the Azores are, there's, that's where quite a bit of Atlantis was. And so, our solar system is travelling through space and takes, some time to travel all around Alcyone, near 26,000 years or so. And during that period of time, we're travelling through space, and space is not really uniform at all, not at all. And Earth really was a part of Saturn in a time past. So it's really, Venus and Earth really been connected more, and Venus and Uranus actually knocking each other's over, so they're spinning from east to west, and the only planets that do that. And Venus sort of wanders and comes into the position that it is today. Of course, the planets that's on the inside control all the growth of things inside the seed, and those planets on the outside manage the growth of everything on the outside. But if you go back and you could look at the eye left on Jupiter, when Venus was ejected, you've really got planets which you could see migrating in and out as they're falling behind the sun, spiraling behind the sun as it's falling as a vortex, falling through space, and you're falling into the Laniakea line in our universe. So, it used to be called on the past like a Sol Niger, the black sun. This is Saturn, and the length of the day and the night was pretty even, you see. So you've really got a past where Saturn, if you look at the various moons, for instance, like Enceladus and Europa, that's Europa on Jupiter, for instance, these are all water bodies. I mean, water and lakes and things can be seen, sort of thing. So Saturn gravity rings are made out of water more and slowly reducing, of course, from the planetary types of smash-ups that has occurred there, like where the moon, a moon used to be, or a planet close to be like the size of our moon relative, I think. But so you could see how heat gets generated internally, and that where a planet comes closer to the sun, it doesn't have to have as much generation because you've got a lot of solar wind and things closer in. But amino acids can be found in outer space. You've got melanin. You've got large bodies like the life colloid megabody in space, like the helix, which is the closest eye, which is made up out of actin and filament amino acid that makes muscle that pulls and contracts, which it would like for your eye. And it's exactly like an eye if you have a look, but you've got also the hand of God. And so these are huge mega life colloid structure, which melanin is made and can be seen as a signature in outer space, same as alcohol can be found out there in outer space. And resonance search for shows, how, for instance, 5,500 degrees Celsius is really too hot for hydrogen. But you've got things which are smaller than hydrogen. Of course, you've got all the way down to magneton, which make up hydrogen itself. And so oxygen atoms also all are made up out of magneton, as everything is, and form a band of water more. And you've got dark spots, for instance, on the sun, and that is actual vapor of water. And vapor as steam really is water, like as the dark spots that show up where the sun is a bit. And the sun's sort of the leading edge of a solar cyclone like we're talking about, and generating large rotating balls of ionized gas, and then north negative in space, which is a static field it's passing through. And what you're looking at is an A field, which is much slower than the B field it's passing through. And you've got our sun's photosphere, of course, causing a core the size more very deep in its density. Yet, if you have a look at the overall, it's about, it's really very only about 1.4%, I think, the density of water or something overall. But the Earth really is captured by the sun and the sun star Saturn, which then deposits our planet where it is. And the sun star Saturn which is really only 7 times the density of water, yes? And 7% the density of water, so it floats on water, basically, which is looking at all of the planet sort of thing. So, which water that you and I drink is older than the sun, of course, because it can have a gigahertz cycle of 1.4, which sheds everything and disperses it, makes water clean, and it's the only substance which is resonance, is the finest resonance in the universe. And so Saturn really is of a sun which collapsed into a massive amount of water, gravitationally collapsing sort of isotonically to a point of an autonization, of an ignition of a fusion, which describes Saturn. And Saturn really has its own planetary bodies, of course, which are merged in which Earth was used to be part of, and the sun is really like a color changedness of its coolness at the surface of itself in relation to how far back out from the sun you go until suddenly you're at a massive heat. And then so what's the reason that something is burning so hot more outside the sun and not on its surface more is because you've got a lot of dust and material, that's not in a vacuum zone. So that's all getting burnt. So the sun's corona really emits ultraviolet and far-infrared and also X-ray emission. And by the way, satellites that are up there giving you, communication is sort of about 10% of the radiation of the sun. So just to give an idea. So it's really isn't the sun as an arc, which really is a leading edge of a solar tornado, and planets are more in curl-back regions within itself, inside itself, of course, where you've got, Bode's law, where things can be resided And so, you're really looking at a fossil age correlation of a younger Earth, because when you look at all the higher irregular types of uncertainty, which no one else could put into their theory, which was only a theory, not a totality of putting all the variables together, so something has more got a contextual validity as well as a construct, as well as face validity, as well as expert validity, and statistical validity, and a reliability of something which could be repeated over and over again as a fact, more to be found, for things to be discovered to be so as true. So to all really is you've got high, very irregular types of conditions that really go on. And then if you look at the marine sediment, which I have quite a bit, to correlate things more and to get a bit of a sense of the age of the Earth, good and better than what maybe anybody else has. You can see showing a radiocarbon sort of dating as far as actually radiocarbon could be looked upon up to a certain point where it's correlated with other things. It's probable that a lot of things can then be seen to correlate a little bit more from its contextual setting that things are set within. So if you look back at the age of the older sea floor, and you can see C14, which is one type of carbon which breaks down, and you can see its half-life and how much carbon was left, but then you could have not too much of an observer to know how much C14 was there or decayed where as a daughter element, when something started, for instance. But when correlated with a lot of other things, you can really see that we do have a younger Earth, certain. But C14 shows the age of the difference of maybe 1,000 years or something between the North Atlantic and its different sorts of ocean level. You've got a whole range of things going on. You've got in Greenland, you've got meteorite, and you've got, of course, asteroid impacts and things, and you've got places where shelteredness existed from the tidal, tsunami waves, and places which was inundated, and you can see great massive chevrons over the continents, and you can see, like the last one especially, which we could talk maybe a bit about, the Berkel chevrons that was created by the Berkel impact, which hits into the southern Indian Ocean in about 4,800 and 4,800 BC. 4,800 years ago, which was about 2,807 BC. And so the age of the Earth really, if you look, you can see how the Earth was, and the oceans grew more, and where it was only 28,000 years ago, and how what the size of the Earth was back then. So you've got the Pacific Ocean beginning really around 65,000 years ago more, and down at the bottom, close where the oldest parts are, is closer to the continent, where more a lake was. And you've got half-life of carbon, which is about 5,730 years, I think, which shows sort of how the last, you could go back maybe 50,000 years more and show where the oldest life-colored fossils sort of more exist relative to this. And for instance, the dinosaurs, which apparently extinct, but yet lots of evidence show that they were still living in Sunderland of New Zealand, in between the sheltered areas, that could easily have survived various impacts that wiped out a lot of other life. But 17,000 years ago, you've got DNA showing that in sediment and deposit and things, DNA showing up and being correlated quite a bit with a much, much younger time frame, where you've got certainly all the animals living together, including the dinosaurs. Yet 23,000 years ago, footprints and things in White Sands National Park, for instance, in New Mexico, and 13,000 to 20,000 years ago more, you've got conifer pollens and things, and fossil footprint sort of signature that's left behind that can be read. And you keep in mind that radiocarbon dating can sort of take you back maybe some 60,000 years, but also, and but then rock dating and this sort of thing is totally fraught, radical of itself. But you can look and see to add in how layers can form just in a very short moment, like what happened in the Grand Canyon because of the flood. But 60,000 years, you can see everything sort of moving apart more. And certainly 27,000 years ago, you've got paintings left in South America, which is the same as Aboriginal paintings in Australia and things. And so you've got flora and fauna, which all sort of shows where the continents were all connected together, like Tasmania was connected to Nevada and Arizona, for instance. So I'm in the same rock and flora and fauna. And so the seafloor fossils really and radiocarbon dating sort of really correlate where tree rings are, and you've got stalactite and stalagmite types of ice core and core types of sample reading to show, the difference in sort of rainfall and things that correlate where this is. So you've got rivers really playing a crucial role in transporting life colloid sediment and things of fossil. And you've got spruce trees sprouting around 7,542 BC in the Great Basin area. And you've got bristlecone pine, which they're reaching the age of over 5,000 years. You've got the Jurupa oak, I think, in Japan, which can be maybe, 13,000 years old. And then Methuselah, which could be 10,000 years or more or something. But some of these trees are 10,000 feet today. And like the Inyo in California, you've got dinosaur bones that certainly are full of carbon-14. So how could that be so apparent if, we couldn't have a younger Earth? So you've got a journey from tree to stone that we're talking a bit about, and it doesn't take too long for something to become fossilized. But the scientific method, which has really got a lot of unproven assumption where that is, it's because you've got no observational reference point for somebody that was actually there to see what was at the beginning of some clock, which could be used, like the radiocarbon dating and this sort of thing. But carbon dating is reasonable up to a certain point where you really are able to correlate it with a lot of other things, which then can show a better sort of correlated age where things are, but it can be consistent more over the many years. And the half-life of carbon-14 it changes its rate and it's not constant either. You see, so there's lots of papers that show this. So it's not a necessary constant clock per se. Things can go on where it can radically accelerate that. And also you're looking at always a ratio of C14 to C12 and this sort of thing. And you've got a hell of a lot more C12 carbon in the atmosphere now because, we're burning carbon and that than what was there. And so rock tests show, a parent and a daughter element that's within it, and a decay of a constancy from a parent to a daughter element that's in something. But how do you know how much daughter element was in something to begin with? I mean, atoms that a parent cannot sort of be really constant per se, and the time rate of a decay which is present cannot be necessary that somebody could say that it was constant or something was known beforehand too much, you see. So these things really are fraught with confounding assumption where you've got crucial proper types of dating which can be more through correlating what goes on more contextually and has some construct validity to it. And so no observational reference point is for the initial condition, which should have been known more, and all daughter atoms which derived only in a closed system, but it's not. You see, you've got a lot of contamination that could go on as well. So how could those clocks be accurate per se? But the decay rate is not too constant, of course, and the assumption that 70 or 80 years of observation could be just sort of minuscule or something, but that's just really ridiculous. It's a constant, not proper condition, which could have gone on where clocks can be measured by various decay rate per se, but it's not probable often where things are certain that people could go back and say something occurred 65 million years ago. It's like, oh my God, there's nothing that actually could show that whatsoever. It's zero. So it's really a theory just like made up. So the decay rate, which shows the past, has accelerated, really a rate of decay that comes about from calamity. Could you actually have a look and check out what that goes on where something is of a calamity and something really is an asteroid impact and things? Of course, you've got an interaction of issues which really interrelate, and calcification of various things, and the time frame that something could just be calcified and from life to become sort of solidified. But in 1986, for instance, the age of observation sort of flowed. And from 1986 to 1996, you get a sample which could be just 10 years old, and then it could show that something was 3.5 million years old, but everybody knows it's not, or 2.8 million years old, because of how many daughter atoms would have been all of a sudden found where something is. You see, so these things are completely, as I said, not too scientific. So you've got ages which are all made to type of agree, and we don't get the same age if you don't have the same variables all matched up, and these things all get matched up because somebody's got a theory. How bad is that? This is sort of what's gone on, and it's terrible. So it shows just a lack of a state of science, of course, which most people could see at the fiasco of things going on, where there's a lot being turned away from anything that ever was considered scientific, especially medical and this sort of thing. But you could show that a massive sedimentary layers really happened very quickly, and during more recent terms like the Burkle crater that was left, and the flood that was 4,800 BC. And so you've got the zircon, which is a tiny molecule, tiny atom of zircon in granite, and that's the dating of zircon. For instance, is just like give you an example of a clock. You've got all these decay clocks. You've got uranium to iridium, and you've got potassium to argon, and zircon to lead, and things and so on. But they all, as you could say or think, you've got hourglasses. If you could put 4 different types of hourglasses up there, they should all fall more and show the same time frame, shouldn't they? But they can't and wouldn't and don't, in fact. But you could go back and look at the flooding and see what happened in story and stuff. You could really map things out pretty good. But if you found soft tissue in the dinosaur bones, it can't be 65 million years old. And you've got, tragedy really to a finite fallen assumption more, where it really rejects proper scientific authority, where tragedy can have been, and didn't bring any of that in, and can't accept that something could have gone on where it wasn't a steady clock, because that just throws everything into a way, doesn't it? So you've got an asteroid impact in 2,807 BC, no question about it. You've got mega tsunamis. You've got the Burkle crater that was recently sort of more associated, and you've got swarm rolls over Australia and over the continent here and Africa. And you've got massive chevrons which show there was a big, huge deluge. Water vaporized, of course, where that impact was when that happened. And quite a bit of ocean would have been just vaporized. And then you got that raining back for quite some time. And it coincides really with various, like 155 different sort of cultural sort of stories. And you've got deep sea sands placed up over the lands, like we're talking about, and deep sea microflora all over the top of the mountains and things. And how do you describe that unless you can actually see that there was a tsunami that just pushed water up over the mountains? And a story that we've got in the Pathahola Bones, which is really a story passed on from someone who survived such a flood, and they were high up in the mountains and talked about that having occurred. They watched it happen. But no one survived often where things were, because most people were at water level, sea level relative. Chevrons could be all traced back where things are to the Burkle crater and that asteroid impact, but massive deposits over all of the islands and impacting sphericals, which is found. You could single out that event and all the scars that was left. I mean, then you could look and also see where old cities were. And look, 4,800 years ago, you've got really an 180-metre high waves, which all originate from a point of its surface, which you could look into see, and 2.6 kilometres sort of to the southeast of these chevrons. You could see chevrons all aligning more and coming back through to the Burkle crater, you see. So it's just like you could see this. You see, you could read the tissue, but all stories really have around 5,000 years ago. You've got Noah's flood, of course, and the big old story with this. And thrown out the window is all this a bit. When you can look and see, well, we've got an arc up there on Mount Ararat, pretty big, and it's a boat. It's huge. So we had huge boats, of course, back then. The Moor certainly had massive boats, and you've got the Southern Indian Ocean coming along, and wasn't there too much as much. And the Atlantic Ocean also growing during the different sorts of asteroid impacts. But you've got 200-metre high tsunamis, and then rainstorm in places, definite, and water that rushed over the land and washed it down to the bedrock, which went about 1,000 miles an hour or something to do that. And rainstorms and things also show great massive precipitation, sudden, and all correlate more to a time frame, which goes back, you see. You've got 2,807 BC, you've got this flood like we're talking about, and then all, kind of perished quite a bit because at the water level. Ocean water is volatilized, and winds really spread vapor all around the world. And you've got many years of magnetic storms which go on and all sort of becomes devastated, you see. Yes. So civilization rises back up out of the ashes, but you've got a conspiracy of silence because you've got really isotope decay and radiometrics, which really is not too scientific like we're talking about. The layer corresponding to 10,000 years really is ridiculous. The idea that that's actually how long it took to form a layer. It's just correlating with something that's around 65 million years old or something. It's like, oh, Jesus, it's really crazy, honest. But you could see discovering in the past events like, the Grand Canyon certainly can see fault movements where Earth could sink more and raise up. Certainly, like when a lot of water all of a sudden is over the land, it sinks down, doesn't it? When it's released again, it's just a massive amount of water it sets everything off more when it moves around. But fresh tissue inside the dinosaur bones shows that they really didn't perish 65 million years ago, which is ridiculous. And the fossilized finger bones and things which has been found in the Pluxee River Basin, where other fossilized bone of dinosaur also is found, and in Glenrose also more recent. But you've got large dragonflies which had wingspans of over 30 inches or more, and they weighed over a pound or something. You've got large bugs roaming around, and you've got an Earth which has only got 25% of the gravity that it has today. I mean, the Earth grew in a disciplinary sort of manner without any subduction, without any plate shifting, without any rotation of tectonic plates, that everything fits together really on a smaller planet. And you could see everything joins in the Pacific perfect, and all over, all of its, everything is nailed about what we're just talking about. It's a recent time that you've got the duck-billed platypus that's roaming around, and you can date what that is. And you've got the Aboriginals art being left, which we're just talking a bit about, and you've got the older seafloor bottom, only like around about 125,000 years old, not millions of years old. Older dating of the seafloor, only about 180,000 years old, not millions of years old. So what did people say about the asteroid that hit in 2007 BC, which we know today, formed a lot of all the inland waterways that push salt down and this sort of thing, which used to be like fresh water. Mega tsunamis and the Burkle crater recently associated, of course, and you can see all, as we talked about, chevrons just being left all over the land. Of course, the dating of a younger Earth and looking at things of the seafloor expansions we talked about, pushing apart the continents from each other, which is 37 miles thick in the continents, and then only 5 miles thick sort of ocean floor. And so pushing the continents apart and the Earth growing, as you could see that. The asteroid impact boils and heats up the mantle suddenly, and all becomes more plastic, and the continents start to push apart from each other somewhat. And by water sort of locked up into the inner Earth, it comes out to be more flowing, and only a very small amount of it's flowing at the moment, which has made up all the oceans which we have now. And so really, it wasn't really very long ago, honest, yet 12 times, the planet is larger today than it was. You've got ocean floors spreading, starting around, 85,000 years ago, more, not so long ago. You've got Lake Victoria at a very bottom of a very, very old bottom, and you've got a very old bottom in the Mediterranean too. And hugging the Pacific plate, you could see the oldest lake bottoms close to the seafloor, known more closer to the continents, and then the younger seafloor where the expansion joints are. So all the Mediterranean, and you could see through the Great Divide, you've got seafloor spreading and a pattern over time, and you've got an acceleration of time, and it sort of subsides with a relativeness, and you've got an instance where you can see various moments, like 15,000 years ago, a massive spread started to occur and went from 200 millimeters suddenly to 200 millimeters a year. So suddenly you've got a massive expansion, and what goes on where something is caused like this is sort of really explaining what did go on and does go on. But 15 million years ago can't be, it's in the millions. God help us. It's like this is sort of 15,000 years ago more, and now you can see everything correlates much more in a time frame of things. You've got the Indian Ocean skipping out a asteroid that goes in and pops out above Java, like we talked about, and creates the biggest magnetic eye which the Earth has at the moment, where most magnetic storms all come out of. They've got an age of progressiveness of the use of all that area where Nan Madol was, and various pieces of equipment was to cause it to rain on various terraces and things, which would today, if they were just in full bloom and growing, could feed the whole Earth. These terraces on the in the Philippines and in the northern areas of New Guinea. The age really is progressively older, as we talked about, the further you move away from the mid-ocean ridge expansion joint. But 0.1 centimetre, sort of, or 0.4 a year, could have suddenly grown all of a sudden to be 17 centimetres, 6.7 inches per year growing. And so the seafloor spread causes sea levels to rise and Earth expands, and yet it hasn't expanded, it hasn't grown more in its overall mass. And so this explains things a lot, because water has an anomalousness at 42 degrees Fahrenheit or 4 degrees Celsius. It's at its maximal loading point. I think we might wrap things up just to this moment where the program is, but we could talk a bit more, like in the next program, a little bit more. We could talk about, quite a range of things I think we should talk about, but more a little bit about this topic. I think people are interested. But a JC quanta critically is existing of water, where a liquid state, where temperature dependent C is existing, and it's a maximal density at 4 degrees or 42 degrees Fahrenheit, and it's a high melting point. Water does, and it's also got a very high critical point where its surface tension comes to bounce and have a viscosity. And high heat vaporization, it expands above what's its critical JC quanta temperature, and goes above this. So water becomes suddenly far less dense, and of course it expands. And water is extremely got incredible properties. And inside a quartz crystal, for instance, where you've got liquid water there, it really is radical. That type of a water, what's going on where this is. But you've got a change in temperature, and you've got a JC quanta of expansion in water going on, and you've got this, which explains perfectly the growth of the Earth. Yes? Right. So anyway, the dating of the younger Earth causes us to see how you can factor in the seafloor expansion, where the tectonic plates all pushed each other apart. You can see the ocean floor spread starts, where it did start. You could look and see old seafloor like under Lake Victoria still today, like we talked about. Yes. And so, I think it is up for a greater sense of looking into things, and certainly not just an acceptance of an older past. And this idea is really based upon fact, which is looked at, like we're just talking about here. Yeah. So anyway, how's that, mate? Yeah.
Oh, so I'm so thankful that I get to listen to you, David, and
Bit of a
your teaching is
fireside chat,
just
mate.
the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
And you have some other people who think so. Um, let's see.
Uh,
Would you would you answer a question or two?
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
thank you
yeah,
so
sure.
much. Thank you so much. So um oh, I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing. Lucas from Canada was he said to thank you for answering his question about the sacred secretion, and he said, how can one be best supporting the body in sympathetic resonance with the ancient architect's grander choreography, i.e., tissue salts in tandem radiation with the celestial body's macrocosmic dance, to be reverberating clearly toned as an instrument in conscious harmony, as pneuma, spirit resonating, the vessel flute of our eye awareness in this most pure essence of original design. I told him I would read it word for word for you.
Well, lots of nominalizations, unspecified verbs, missing referential index. You've really got to be in a bit of a trance to kind of come up with what something could be there. It's a very general, but
Okay.
so for instance, like having a greater awareness about the time frame of things, and like looking and seeing a grand morning minimum coming up, which we're going to be coming into more of an ice age. Looking at things more like what's going on, where the climate changes are, and what are they doing that's impacting all of the earth where this is, and that's not natural per se. These are things which, if somebody's aware, we all can be having to administrative council and vote for the things which should be. And so now that's laws of versus bylaws. Bylaws are sort of like private laws and lower level of law than a body of sovereign people that come together, not from any vested interest whatsoever, or conflicted interest, which has to be a sovereign body, not a body politic that would be joined only by representing people that is in a fictional level versus from the land. So many things which yours and our thinking and what we do can impact our life, of course. And so life is done to you and I, but sitting in front of a heater and not knowing that maybe there's no negative or positive or neutral magneton in the air there, and that's more important, maybe even oxygen or carbon dioxide, and because it's sort of not talked about, sort of people could just fall over after or be dizzy from being sitting in front of one of those heaters, and because there's no magneton. So these things, you and I, we have a plasma body that's just fed, and space where somebody's sitting, it's got more negative ions there. People want to say, wow, I want to sit there. Something is invisible, but they could feel the freshness of something, yes? And so it's being tuned in a little more to everything, and fitting more into the natural cycle as we can, and thinking and acting and being more, moving more toward a golden age, which all of us can, where we have administrative councils and we the people really are running the show versus corporate bodies, which is below we the people, which, we the people haven't formed any bodies to be any administrative councils. And so what we have is the enemy, that's us, not having done this job. So knowledge, where you and I are, it can be more in a golden age, and things can be developed more, or things can have been really, truly tragic, and meat grinder types of conditions going on, and those are things which should be questioned and corrected. But plasma is a body that we have, and happiness and playfulness is our original condition. And whole brain functioning is when you've got a synchronization between the hemispheres, and pleasure and interest are whole brain functioned state specific, whereas aversion is state specific with limited mind function. You don't and can't get into your frontal cortex through aversion. And so when is it that somebody finally decides to frame things positively for the rest of their life and be careful with the things that they say? And who's saying to people, be careful with what you say, don't say things that you shouldn't say? And why not have, why not let, silence be more, and it can't be proved on silence except if you clear up dichotomy. And why not be positively framing things? Because you shouldn't be framing things in another way. What's the reason for that? There isn't. especially when you can frame things positively, these sorts of things. So there's so many things as a scale you and I we can do where we are. We can have a longer life. We can have more room inside, and so these are things which is sacred, things which you and I can do, which is in our being, versus I made this or I said that or you know we formed a group or something. These things aren't sacred. What's sacred is one's own being. And so the more that we're able to focus on a scale of things which is more natural for our own selves, the better off we are. And at this moment, like, because we should form administrative councils because we haven't, then you've got all kinds of things which isn't really for you or I. It's only for sort of corporations and things, not you or I. Yeah? So,
Okay.
anyway.
Um, I have your unpublished writings, and I was wondering if I should look in there for something.
Yeah, yeah,
Mary from Cornwall was requesting
yeah,
a Dr. Jubb handbook on how to look after the female body.
yeah. Um, there's a work which is about immaculate conception and childbirth, and it explains, like, when you get out of the way, what nature is. And so it's a real look at ovulation and menstruation and all the different conditions that affect her, which a pancreas is a major organ which we assist to help repair. Because the pancreas is what causes fluids to flow and fluids to be of a slipperiness and fluids to actually be able to pass through very fine, channels and things like this, and which fluids have to be not sticky. And when somebody's got a lot of cortisol because they have a lot of don't want, can't, should, try, but must only, they're going to run their pancreas out because cortisol and adrenocorticotropic hormone, epinephrine, these substances all, and adrenochrome and these things all, rob energy from the body in excess, because you and I, we're not designed to be going through life with a lot of don't want, can't, should, try, but must only, very hardwired. And so is anybody saying anything about that? No. Well, they should, because 78% of the nervous system really should be behind anything that you do to get a message passed on. Because if you only have 77%, it's not going to get passed on, isn't it? So knowledge migrates more where you and I are, and a dispersed knowledge more comes about. And Canada goes back 7,500 years, and then you see Canaan forming after that, where the language is transposed, and it's the same as the original language in Canada of the originals there, and Greek is the same language. These people got the same DNA. So when the flood came, of course, it emptied the Mediterranean out, and then it gets sort of refurbished and what have you. But Canada is much older than Canaan, and same with San Francisco and New York and Chicago and Phoenix and a lot of the older cities in the world, which is here in Turtle Island. My ancestors are buried there in Illinois, in Olney, King Jubba and Cleopatra, and probable it is that both the first King Jubba the first and Cleopatra the seventh, and King Jubba the second and Cleopatra the eighth, all buried there and entombed. So this was the western province of the Moor, and you've got a history really of the past, which like is told more in the Path of Hollow Bones a little more, but something which really turns things more into what makes sense. You there, mate?
Sorry, I forgot to press the mute
Oh,
button.
oh, sorry.
Okay, my bad. definitely something I'm gonna be going back over, just like the other ones, which I'm really thankful you opened my eyes to the importance of sodium, the sodium potassium pump,
Yes,
and
and that's the biggest problem the world has when children are born, and unless that's recognised that bags and bags and bags of sodium salt, rock salt, that gets pumped into people, it gives them edema once they go in for all these tests and stuff. But what's the reason for all the bags and bags of sodium, that rock salt that's put into people, and unquestioned, and it's not in any amphoteric state whatsoever. So people could learn a little more about how an element should come from life and not be a mineral. There's a big difference between an element and a mineral. What an element is a mineral that passed through life. It's really different in shape, and it's certainly different in the way that it shows up as well. It's more in a monotonic state. Every element can show up in a monotonic state, see? Meaning it's got equal and opposite forces. So it doesn't really want to join with anything. It's actually more as a colloid kept apart. Yes? And it's enzymatically linked versus it's diamagnetically stuck with other elements and become heavy.
okay.
And it's calcium in excess, because when cortisol is raised, with a lot of don't want country try but must only, which could be a person's knee-jerk response. And control freaks always are leaving and walking off to control circumstance and things, and then distracting massively, not letting a subject matter come up, or let's see, interrogating, causing people that one one's self to feel smaller inside because of the questions that one has and things, and intimidation. These are all things which could move someone to do something, but doesn't ever motivate anyone, which is more an internal generator, more of yours or my motivation area. And a care really is, it should always be, because where care is, then goodness is. And where somebody says, I don't care, or I don't want to be here, it's sort of really very incongruent. And a lot of speech is very incongruent, isn't it? It's not supportive of life like it should be. And it's moving in the golden age. You're really looking at unity conscious, and you're really easy able to see frozen logos.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I guess, can I ask one more for myself?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, okay, so there's a few books here that I went through, and two of them are called Metabolic Neuropathy. It was like a part one, part two,
Yes, yeah.
and I think I got another one called Mental Health. But what I was going through the metabolic neuropathy, I wrote down this quote, and it says, "Thinking is equivalent to sickness." I thought that reminded me of something you were saying.
Yeah,
And
yes. Yeah, how can somebody come up with anything by thinking? Thinking is occupied. Somebody has to be empty to read things, and that's not thinking. Studies show, matter of fact, which genius is, and you've got areas of your brain which is completely empty. These are people who really have genius. Most people have got lots of areas of their brain going on and internal dialogue, and never a moment of inner quiet at all. So it's like turn off all internal dialogue and zip it forever and be empty inside. And to practice what this is, and this is now we live meditation, which is so important. When you have inner quiet, you've got the body to be more in a meditative state, which is so important where healing is. You've really got a parental tribal relation, just the same as you've got dog star Sirius and our son moving through space, and you've got a hemisphere of our brain functioning the same as the hemisphere at the other, and you've got a hemi-synchronization happening where you've got a massive capacity for energy to flow across the corpus callosum. And somebody who uses their brain more, they're developing areas of it, as a result of the use of it. And so some people have incredible capacity to see visual images and this sort of thing, and a functional plasticity of the brain. But it only can be where something is in receptivity, and where receptivity is a sort of a breath that's inward, an inspiration through the nose, which trips and triggers a state of being, not a state itself, but being, and where endogenous opiates, enkephalins, beta endorphins, we've got a range of anandamide element which is released more. I mean, these things are like a secondary nervous system which you and I have, and energy flows down to our head from the northern stars, which travel with us against a background which is we're moving through. These are stars which stay with us, and the northern stars, you've got the dog star Sirius, which is the same shape as Taurine and Taurus, and so that shape conditions magnetic energy that passes down through the heavens, that passes through your head. And taurine is an amino acid, which is the same shape as the dog star Sirius, and and this Taurus and things which is in the heavens above us. So we have a conditioning of, in a grand scale, and things on a smaller scale within ourselves. And we're moving more in an age where you've got physical time can be given and materials created, and spooky action and distance, where you've got the B field being used more to communicate instead of the A field. There's lots of things which would all go on that golden age comes to be, where currency is spent, where we the people own the growth of currency versus someone else getting a benefit from that, but none of us, because you and I were not involved, in organising more like we should and can do and will do a strange attractor, which is the Ministry of Councils and things. Yeah. Anyway, so many things positive, really, having an inner silence more inside, being your greater inner solitude, and turning the mind off from being associated from one memory to another. It's a way for somebody to fall asleep. And awareness is present while you're sleeping. Awareness is present while you're dreaming. Awareness is present in a wakeful state. And awareness is above those three other states. And those three other states are very limiting. One would be focused to grow more omnipresent, become more in eye awareness. And what's the reason for thinking? It only can be because of clearing up the economy, and thinking is dichotomy often, you see. So you could use a stick, which is thinking, to burn all the other sticks, and that's a useful thought, but it can clear away all the other. But what would you imagine that you go through life and there isn't any internal dialogue, peace inside, no matter what, and you're able to act in the moment? And isn't this enough to do? I think it's sort of a great practice, yes. So coming just to complete it, you've got chatty Cathy's, which could have up to 80,000 thoughts a day, and you've got males which could have on average up to 40,000 thoughts a day. And the more estrogen, the more thinking thoughts. This is not a natural condition, really, especially where the thinking is really not logical. People are giving themselves up to their thinking, which isn't logical. Yeah. I think it's stereo common sense isn't something that has to be expressed. It's common sense.
Okay. So, is there I'm gonna answer my own question, but a way that we can maybe like short circuit? I'm just thinking out loud, I guess, but the cleansing and things like life colloid, where you kind of clear out space, and then does that give us more emptiness in our thoughts?
Uh, yes, it does, because uh, what's unnatural is where you've got an logarithm, which is you really should have quite a bit of positive parts, where something could be negative. You've got to have a certain amount of positive parts to fit that negative piece in so it could work as a proper normal logarithm. But otherwise, you've got a real resistance transfer. You've got no one ever talking about what should be, which is the sacred cow, which isn't really being talked about like should be, like sodium phosphate in soap. Why shouldn't people know how toxic that is? Repeated exposure causes the skin to lose all of its proper luster, and you see people just going hog wild on all these detergents, and that's wrong. You can't feed your skin while she's just washing out all the oils and continuously non-stop using detergents and plastic, fragrance that the blood is drinking. When you can smell it, it's terrible. You've got detergents that feed all the wrongful life colloid in the intestine and go into a state of eutrophication, which all causes stone formation more in the body. Phosphate excess is really linked to neoplasm and exocrine gland disruption, where somebody can't let go of things. They also have challenges with constipation. Self-love really is really awareness. That's what narcissism is. Narcissism is self-love. Having a disorder of self-love is a narcissistic disorder, but narcissism itself is self-love. One should note the difference between self-love, to wit, more from a record where many really is in a disorder more that's behavioural, fully and conditioned more, and selective, meaning it's just not all the time. So it's where somebody really rejects other people's boundaries, that they actually have personal, private sort of boundaries, and people who don't respect other people's boundaries much, but don't care to just be going around switching on and switching off and being a yo-yo. So like suddenly, all of a sudden being a yo-yo, turning on, turning off. And then this is not really managing any emotion at all. Someone who's mature is managing emotion, but many are cortisol dependent and focusing always on getting away from, getting outside, stop, don't, and leave. And so these are words which are very, very cortisol dependent. When someone's cortisol dependent, they're so knee-jerked, hardwired to respond in a manner like that. And one has to stop that because it's just completely destructive, fully. The adrenochrome gets all built up. One can really heat their brain up, and they can have all kinds of aneurysms and strokes and things, and really not caring. Um, and you can hear it, and it's very loose goosed. It's why not just stop all of that? Did you ever hear anybody say, stop all your crazy ass thinking? And did anybody say that? Why shouldn't somebody be going around actually practicing what this is? It's like that'd be a better thing to do and say where you are. But what's outside that's really deep, that's a state more rooted, more in a high calcium. Yeah, too much, matter of fact. Excessive. When you've got high calcium, you're going to have high cortisol that did that. And then where's your sodium pump when you've got high calcium? You've got to pump calcium out of the cell, but how can you? You've got a pump which doesn't work. It's slowly too much. And the sodium doesn't work, which we talk a bit about in the other program. You've got rock salt, which is wrong. You're not supposed to crush up rocks and give it to your baby. How stupid. Some people and nations have far better sense than others. Like Koreans just love to have ocean wind evaporated salt. And that's just sacrilegious for anyone there to, get salt from an inland lake. You just would never eat it. But here we are getting everything from an inland lake, let's say, not having any idea, just pumping it full into the hospitals through all these bags. And everybody's not okay about that. You see all the edema and everything that it creates, and it's just loss of life afterward. Sodium pump really gets way too heavy to shift calcium out of the cell to pump it out, and then the cell death occurs because of cell excitation. And you've got a cystic fibrosis transfer regulatory protein deficiency where people are born a lot and they have pancreas and bone gland deficiencies, which is our program to assess to help heal, because otherwise you've got a life called a transmutation of potassium into sodium, which should be, whereas a natural temperature of 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and when temperature drops below that, you don't have a proper function. And the turgor, which is sort of a membrane of pressure, which has an equilibrium of a floating wave, as a tensor wave, as a JC quantum, doesn't exist in a body which is got out of balance, where it doesn't have proper capacity to have conduction, where it doesn't have proper capacity to be able to neutralize, we have spare north negative to do such, and where you don't have parts of hydrogen in balance where things are. You've got these three elements, which is your terrain, and the terrain is everything. Change the terrain and you can heal the body.
Amen.
Yeah, so cortisol, come full circle, really creates a lot of more, of that sort of thing, mate, yes? So it's why somebody could really learn more about whole brain functioning and really practice more what this is, because now you're really more getting into your frontal cortex and using the frontal cortex versus most are not really using the frontal cortex when you've got a lot of don't want, can't, should, try, but must only really hardwired and everything. Yeah.
Hardwired. Um, I don't want to keep you on all night, David. Can I ask you real quick?
Yeah.
Because it popped up in the book that I was going through, and then it also popped up on one of these popular. I would call it a corrective exercise, where he talks about the. He was talking about um, how the body, um, kind of a natural or holistic approach to physical therapy, where he was saying like people are doing these different exercises, or breaking the body. Like if they think, oh, my knee hurts, it's not. It's because of the best way to fix the knee is not to work on the actual knee, but to work on the whole body, how it moves. And that's like his general approach. And then this one topic post that mentioned something that you spoke about was this hypothalamic pituitary axis.
Right. Yes.
And
Um.
I don't know. And the other thing
Okay.
I have written next to it is methylation. I don't know if that's two
Yeah.
separate things, but
Yeah. Oh no, it's not actually because we tire our body out. Methylation is very important to help detox and build neurotransmitters. But where you haven't gutted your mind, how can you mind the gut? These all things together, of course, where someone suddenly is more cortisol, their mouth is dry, they don't have proper slip, stick, and bulk where things are going on, because it's not really proper natural condition to be remained in for a moment in time. Somebody's intelligence could be there, but not to be remained in that state. And you can see a lot of people that remain in a state of stickiness and thickness and heaviness, and they sink, and what's heavy and hard sinks to the bottom versus what's light and floats more to the top, which is a typical phlegm kind of a condition where somebody is, which is into a lot of don't want, can't you try, but must only. They breathe through their mouth more through sleep, and they're often actually mouth breathing, so they've got a lot more rabbit breath, and plenty blood boy types of behaviour. Typical
oh
phlegm
my
is
god.
clear though, and then otherwise their phlegm becomes sticky and frothy, and they've done that just by just their brain being more rageful or quick to fly off the handle, and they reckon it's okay to be that way. No, this is completely irresponsible. It's like being a baby. Did anybody ever say stop thinking, or your thinking is ridiculous? They should.
Okay.
Which is what I say a lot. But typical phlegm is clear and thin and sort of unnoticeable much, where you put your saliva into water, it sort of just disperses where things are, versus having real bad camel legs, where you spit in the morning. For instance, thickened mucus really is absolute, no question about it. You've got cystic fibrosis and things are going on, which would eventually affect somebody like pancreas function and later on in life. But white, yellow to turn more green or brown where the phlegm is, you've got environmental lifestyle factors, which really, along with dirty magnetic energy where you sleep, you're not sleeping with your head in the north, your feet in the south, you've got lots of wires in the wall.
Oh
Hey,
yeah.
you're not in the proper field, are you? No, you're not. So did anybody say that you're not supposed to be in 6 volts sleeping? Did anybody say you're not supposed to be sleeping where 12 volts are? Christ, where is that? Please, in nature you're not going to have that, you see? So don't you think that that's actually just wrong? Do you think that people getting fried?
Definitely.
Where's the scale of thinking about things where saliva doesn't really simply disperse into water? What's the evidence of cystic fibrosis? You see, you've got thickened mucus. Don't tell me that people haven't. They sure do. They've got this post-nasal drip, big time. They breathe. They've got real nasally types of voices. Oh, God help us, it's so bad. I mean, lots of behavioural challenges, big time. So why shouldn't someone wake up? Thick mucus acts like a barrier to defend against all the non-ecological particles which have been created from cortisol thinking. A lot of don't want country try but must only as being so hardwired. How the hell can anybody get into the frontal cortex there? It's like honey could be used as an expectorant, just like products that we have, like 4NR, which helps expectorate and clears mucus away, but like a product which is thin the saliva more. It's poorly kept life quality terrain, which one's going on where behaviour isn't. So somebody never gutted their mind, and so how could they mind their gut? You see, the gut's taken over, and the brain has to
Yeah.
just put up with something. But some mucosal glands and airways all produce mucin, and it shouldn't be thick and sticky. It should be thin and flowing. But when you're born and it's thick and sticky, isn't that because then suddenly you've got all sorts of kidney conditions and things like that as well? Yeah, but like how about clearing up the pancreas? How about actually assisting the pancreas? And everything else become more normal. You've got cilia, which has got its unified pulse, which sweeps mucus along. You've got the south positive, along with north negative element, which nutrient assists more clear fibrocystic condition away. And so product and program which we have really, like the 4MR and the program and like digest aid and evacuees, all this is clear up behaviour as well.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, the body is the mind's experience of itself. When we lay down, we're in repose, we're relaxed, we really improve carbon, we get more carbon, and so oxygen can be more exchanged in your body. An internal dialogue, like if it's like zero, how good is that? 80,000 is wrong for sure. It's like a rabbit death afterward, big time during it. It's anxiety, which really is present, and yet in whole brain patterning, you're really more living more in the whole of yourself, giving your body a chance to be really fully functional versus the ventral and a cystic fibrotic type of a state. So applying life hydrate in water, for instance, is just to help reduce anxiety because it's state dependent, state specific. So you really get your proper body surfactant, and suddenly you've got more fluid and flow. And where something was more stuck, you've got more excessive mucus behind what that is. And so, you've got like Rose of the Desert, which is a really great product, which really, no matter what, you can instantly feel and see how that thins the fluid. So you've got a polarization, which is a polar completeness versus polarized sorts of ways of thinking about things. We've got to control more within ourselves and in a flow rather than a cystic fibrotic, meaning sticky fluid. And so witnessing everything that's sort of more around an oral type of anxiety, you've got overloads where eventually it causes all sorts of Hashimoto's types of disease and thyroid challenges where you've got a lack of proper cognition, and suddenly, a lot of things are not able to be stopped, like internal dialogue turned off because you need neurotransmitters to do things just like that and what have you. But behavior creates neurotransmitters, not neurotransmitters create behavior.
Wow.
Mm.
Is that like the broadest pathway is... Shoot, I don't remember the quote. The broadest pathway for...
Your body's pathway for change is through movement. If you give the body a new movement experience, the mind can conceive new possibility. And that's our work in transformation and behavior change work.
Yeah, since we started doing regular programs, I made some positive changes. I had to change the cleaners I was using to, tomorrow I got the recommendation from Thomas to get borax and vinegar and baking soda and some peppermint
and
oil.
citric acid or something, and things, you can make fantastic cleansing things for clothing and things like that. And it's not, it's sort of friendly to nature. Feeling flow is really caring, and everywhere where we look, we can be caring. We could be seeking agreement, or people are not seeking agreement. How bad is that? It's really not right at all. You've got a body devoid of proper vitamin, where somebody's in excess of where things are, and you've got stone formation. Of course, calcium is 10,000 times on the outside of the cell as well as on the inside of the cell. There's no other element that's such a high disparity. And cortisol, emotional types of responses are really polarize you, and very hardwired, like we said. Someone could become more aware of what that is. Like you could see learned helplessness versus plenty of choices exist, but somebody's not taking what that choice is. It's really learned helplessness, and a choice, the presentness is, but a psychological mutism is where it's displayed more selective mutism, meaning it's not all the time. So selective, restrictive types of behavioural patterns where somebody is nominalising or using unspecified verbs to make something apparent logical, but it's adverse or it's negative. It's not whole brain pattern whatsoever. There's often a lack of rapport being built like it should be, and communication is the response that you're getting back, not what you thought or considered yourself, but the response that you're getting back from others. But cortisol really is triggered by all of these selective restrictive violations. Why shouldn't one go along and sort of learn more whole brain patterning ways to be, and you're putting things in terms of possibility instead of necessity and this sort of thing. And so you've got more oxytocin, which is connecting people together more, rather than cortisol causing brain freeze and disrupting all other cognitive types of processing for people around you. Unless you've got really good skill to just manage it. Sort of stuff. But cortisol really reduces all fluid activity, eventually really unchecks people, kind of are left with I don't care sort of thing, and empty the body really is, and yet care is otherwise. You've got really an abnormal cystic fibrotic transfer regulatory gene, and can be shown. Chronic fatigue, cystic fibrosis is all a transfer and sort of receptivity, sort of more in physiology. And so fluid really isn't of its proper surfactant, Lukey, yet it should be and is, where you've got proper behavioural conditioning. Otherwise, you've got lots of hair loss, and people start to look more like a ghost of their former self-mates.
Oh boy. Yeah, well, I definitely am not turning on my space heater tonight. After that, holy.
Well, the temperature should fall through the night when we sleep, and we've got far infrared technology. It's made more from ceramic, which doesn't interfere as much with magneton in the air like all these elements do. So, there's Peltier devices with a more solid state heating and cooling, which all these older technologies would all disappear in a while. But otherwise, you've got not just internal dialogue, which is non-stop sort of, which causes people to be more mouth breathing away more. And you could really tell because, of course, anybody's voice where that goes on is very, very nasal more. And the dry lung and dry mouth and pancreas all go along hand in hand. I mean, a long, hardwired stress sort of response where anybody is, it's only what could have gone on, and it's just sort of biting the hand that feeds all the time, and it's setting sort of on or then it's off, behaviour-wise with someone else. These are things which really impact overall, and we can keep our function or have lost that. It really is about our life colloid terrain and how you and I or anybody more is in a loving state and more in perfect detachment. Otherwise, you've got calcium suddenly forced to be ever more than it should be, and truly disastrous. And anybody can see the effect of what that is, because thinking can't be turned off, and you see a lot of rumination where somebody's fixed about something, and you've got that choices existing which somebody's not even taking any of those choices. You see, it's really something which, why shouldn't any rock which is turning all things be turned over itself, so that you and I, all of us, we can live life more abundantly and be more total from the bigger picture of things. Yeah.
Well, you're the best, David, and I hope I can be a good ambassador for you and for your teachings.
Well, I think these shows are really great, mate. Really love for you touching base with us today, tonight, where we are in recording this. But anyway, I hope everybody's having a really great day to listen to this, and we'll look forward to catch up to you in a future show, mate. Love you, mate.
Love you too, mate. Thanks a lot.
Love you, mate. Good night, mate.
Good night.